Connor Frieder's.
Welcome to the Postgame. Michael Brooks here with the team and Harvey J.K., returning champion. How you doing, Professor Kaye?
I'm always a happy guy when I'm with you, and I'm only sorry I have to talk to Ben long distance.
Still long distance. Well, one day, I'm sure you'll meet Ben Burgess. Ben Burgess is, of course, our resident logic guy, coming to bring us some logic. We discovered that he's an Aries, so it makes sense. I had wondered why he was so into all of that shit, but I read his chart.
He's an
and
Aries,
and
I'm the Libran, and
yeah, you're a Libra. He's an Aries, and every time this triggers people, I'm only going to talk about it more. That I can promise you. That you can bank.
So, what Ben Burgess tries to do is pretend that his feelings that he gets from the estrogen in the environment are actually logic, instead of just a sensitive desire to be a fucking pussy. That's what I call logic for the left. Hey, Ben, can we do an actual reasoning process together? Oh, the poor people, I don't want them to work. I feel so sad. Let me find a Bertrand Russell quote. By the way, Bertrand Russell, also a pussy. He's your hero. He's a freaking vegetarian who couldn't hold a job.
Is that his hero? Is that his hero?
Yes, that is his hero.
Yeah, this is...
we come out of two different traditions, I can tell.
Wow.
Yeah. No,
wow, fight amongst the cocks. Two different traditions of caring about lazy, shiftless people and peace.
Piece of shit.
I support the wheelchair guy. No, I support the vegetarian guy.
You're talking to two sides of Ben now, I think.
Yeah, no. So we have to. Speaking of which, actually, I forgot to send. Speaking of fascist machismo, I will send to you guys, or maybe Vic could. Vic, if you're listening, you could tweet at them. This incredible footage of Bolsonaro encouraging a bunch of people around him to drop to the ground and do push-ups, and then he can't. There has to be a really powerful metaphor in there, and obviously we have to do that on the show.
Fucking Bolsonaro's fighting the cultural Marxists.
All right, hello Ben, how are you? That was a right-wing Mandela
I'm
interlude.
Yeah, no, I'm good. I'm actually right-wing Mandela feels like an appropriate warm-up since I'm going on the Jesse Lee Peterson show tomorrow morning.
What the fuck? I thought I was... Wait a second. Wait. We have two pieces of business to deal with. First, we got to play your song, and then I got an invite to go on Jesse Lee Peterson's show. Apparently, Griscom has too. What the hell's going on? This guy's just trying...
Yeah,
Reverend Jesse Lee Peterson.
Know. Well, I'll tell you who he is. He's a man of God and not a pussy.
That's literally. I mean, I don't know. You're gonna have to Google him.
Like a good warm up for what I assume that experience would be like.
So, what do you think of?
Link.
What do you think of Donald Trump, the Great White Hope? So, you don't think that Omarosa betrayed Donald Trump? No. You know, there was a lot of freedom in Zanzibar when the apartheid regime still existed.
I think he said she wasn't
think
his
you're
kind
ready.
of woman.
Oh God. All right. Let's play Ben's song. I can't believe you're going on Jesse Lee Peterson's show. I want to go to Mockery really badly.
I will.
So please go.
Okay.
You got to restrain me.
Okay.
Logical analysis. You're going to show us how to argue that.
this is based on data from a bunch of different countries. There's abundant evidence that at this point that's bullshit. Breaking down these right-wing arguments and looking at how they're supposed to fit together.
Okay, break it down. Break it down. Break it down.
I do like that.
Oh, that's brilliant. Who did that again? Ben? I don't have the. I'm actually no. Ed. Where's your info? I'm sorry. I'll get that later. All right, Ben Burgess, the debunk. What do we have? You better mind your P's and Q's. You're about.
That was Ed Keenan.
Oh, great.
Yeah. Since in the same spirit as going on the Peterson show, although it's my goal for that not to be invited back. So I went on this libertarian podcast, Part of the Problem, and did a debate with Gene Epstein, who's a older guy. He's a Austrian economist, libertarian, and the debate covered a lot of other ground, but the part that we're going to be listening to is about an argument that you hear versions of very often that has a long lineage on the right, which is that socialism, trying to democratize the economy, would actually have bad effects on freedom for unpopular minorities, and this is something I think that I see a lot in the Wall Street Journal and stuff now, every kind of conservative or libertarian writer who thinks that they can sort of seize on this contradiction that oh, wait a second, you want things to be democratically controlled? Well, you know who is democratically elected? Trump, right? So we know how much you hate him. So this is going to be kind of a contradiction in your worldview. So this is
by your logic.
That's right. Yep. That's right. So this is going to be the argument that Gene Epstein is pushing at the beginning of the clip from our. It's going to be two exchanges back and forth of me and him in the debate.
As far as human liberty go.
Connor Friedersdorf asked in The Atlantic about democratic socialism, quote, how many Muslim prayer rugs would the Democratic majority of workers vote to produce? How many Qurans? What share of construction materials would a majority of workers apportion to new mosques? Bhaskar has written, and I assume you agree, that he wants socialism to, quote, involve a commitment to a free civil society, especially for oppositional voices. But now imagine an oppositional voice like mine that wants the democratically elected planners to commit resources to put on public debates, catering libertarians who support capitalism for my sole forum.
This is a a priori concern that really.
Should we pause it or play you out, Ben?
Yeah, let's just play the whole thing and then talk about it.
I like that. Ben's just I think we can play this out. Check this out.
This is a a priori concern that really ignores how public institutions tend to work in the real world. If we lived in a society where there were no laws about what buildings you could put here, you could raise structurally identical worries about democratically empowering cities to pass zoning laws and institute zoning boards. And fair enough, sometimes cities do try to use those things to stop the construction of mosques, etc. However, overall, we live in a society with both democratic zoning and lots of mosques, lots of vegan restaurants, etc. Also, it's worth noting that in the society that we actually live in the real world, the only thing that brought down the whites-only signs from privately owned restaurants around, vast swathes of this country was a heavy dose of statist coercion via the Civil Rights Act of 1964. So I think that the track record of democratic statism is pretty good here, and I'd need a much better reason to think that public institutions in a hypothetical socialist future would have this problem that seems to be notably absent from the public institutions of the present.
With respect to the idea of human liberty, you seem to agree that a necessary component of human liberty is the right to build mosques and get access to financing to do so. you seem to agree that a necessary aspect of human liberty is the right to publish books, to own printing presses, to acquire the funds to do so, to run this old forum, to run part of the problem. I will tell you a brief story. During the Vietnam War, as you probably know, the government was pretty aggressively trying to harass types like Noam Chomsky or others, or Howard Zinn, others who were writing books about the Vietnam War. But if there were at that time a democratic socialist society, with most people, by the way, most of the time supporting that war until it began to really fail toward the waning years, do you really think that Chomsky would be published other than as a sort of underground samizdat a la the Soviet Union?
Yep.
Do you really? Well, excuse me, you really do. Well, then I can only say that you are expressing unfortunate naivete about the power and abuses of government.
Notice, too, some other levers of power that you might think that they would have had. So one thing that Chomsky, maybe some people might think it's hypocritical. I think he just thinks it's kind of funny. But one thing to notice about Chomsky is they spent most of his career teaching at MIT, where, as he often says, he's essentially financed by the Pentagon. Because MIT gets so much of their money from Defense Department contracts. So, man, wouldn't that be, I don't know exactly when he started the job, but if it wasn't during the Vietnam era, although I think he already had his linguistics job at MIT during the Vietnam era, but certainly in the 80s when he was making a lot of trouble about Reagan's covert wars and, in Central America, man, why didn't the state just use that direct lever of power, say, hey, MIT, no more defense contracts until you fire this Chomsky guy? Well, they didn't, for the same reason that they couldn't stop private publishers, which is that there are constitutional barriers to doing this. And this is the same reason why in the era that you're talking about, the Vietnam era, then Governor of California, Ronald Reagan, tried to fire Angela Davis for being a member of the same political party as your mother. And he was unsuccessful in doing so, even though she worked, in fact, not even though.
Well done, Ben. The subtle mama joke.
Ben, I got to ask you.
I do like the non-cock material there, by the way. Very hard to not go ad hominem on your sparring partner.
That guy could make me a Maoist in 5 minutes.
So wait, Ben, you were in the same room with him.
Yeah.
Because I see the brick there. And
This is how stimulated you are by this guy's conversation. You can see the same brick. Let's keep going.
I was looking for historical evidence of where he was.
Was unsuccessful in doing so, even though she worked, in fact, not even though, but because she worked for the University of California, a public university system, because as an employee of the University of California, she is a public employee, and public employees enjoy constitutional protections against being fired for their political opinions that private employees generally do not. Employees of private companies are fired for expressing political opinion all the time.
Well, wow. Well, I like that. So wait, just can I just go ad hom for a second?
Yeah, go
Is
for
this guy you were making? Is this guy's mom? Was this guy a red diaper baby? Is he one of these like?
He was. That's part of his.
Oh
origin
well,
story.
that's okay. Well, we already know what the deal is. There and this is where communists need to take responsibility. There was a handful of total freaks who were particularly raised in usually the Bay Area. The families obviously had a huge amount of psychological issues, and they were really unpleasant to their kids. And then the kids were like, Daddy didn't play catch with me and forced me to look at horrible avant-garde art because of Stalin. And now I'm going to be some libertarian asshole and try to take food out of children's mouths and have exhausting pedant arguments about Noam Chomsky. I think we know what the story is here. If anything, I feel compassion for the guy. Psych.
Well,
okay, Ben.
So there you go, Ben.
Yeah, all right, Ben. Go do your logic thing. But I think I just summarized everything at 30. Can you see how much more efficient that is?
I think he just dumped on you.
I dunked on the other guy. I didn't dunk. Look, no, Ben's doing his best.
Ben, you were great.
Ben was great. But I'm just talking about the
Harvey.
clear. I mean, Jesus
did
Christ,
also
this is a
wanna-
world that David Horowitz
Go on,
lives in.
Michael.
Ben, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I was going to say the psychological effects of being raised by old-time communists, notwithstanding, that it's also worth pointing out that I think there's a cumulative case that you could make here for socialist politics based on exactly the considerations that Jade Epstein is trying to use as a reason to oppose them in the video. That if you care about freedom, not just on paper, but like the freedom in practice of people to engage in dissent and all that stuff, then of course, if you compare the amount of freedom that public and private employees have, that's part of that case. But another part of the case is what you were talking about earlier with Michael about the four freedoms and all that stuff. That if because one of the reasons that freedom from want is important, besides just the sort of basic human level that it's important, is that it's not unrelated to freedom of speech and all these other freedoms. That
Right.
if you're worried that if you lose your job because you piss off your boss, that means that you and your family will be destitute, you're a lot more likely to keep your head down and not cause trouble and not express controversial opinions than if you're liberated from that fear.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, in the Second Bill of Rights speech, FDR says, necessitous men are not free men. And I liked, especially in Bernie's speech, when he went on, if so-and-so was, are you free? And he had about at least a dozen examples. And I thought that was really, really effective. It was a shame that, in fact, it wasn't broadcast on the main networks, or at least even by any of the cable ones.
Well, let me give you a counterpoint. What if your dad has a goddamn malposter in the living room and he won't let you watch the Sunday morning cartoons? Would that make you question your utopian project, Ben?
If you answer that.
Wait, come on, I'm getting into this.
No, fair enough. I feel refuted.
What if your mother doesn't shave her armpits and everyone else can see it, and she's into reading Sartre and his goddamn girlfriend, and you can't play games with the other ones with your friends? How do you like communism now, Ben? Maybe you'd want to start a podcast network with warmed over 90s jokes and freak out about the Clean Air Act. Do you see?
Yeah, no, that's a good point.
Thank you.
Yep.
Exactly.
I'm telling you, it's a type. I mean,
That's why
David
I thought he was
Horowitz.
dumping on you, because he literally was making this Gene Epstein, is that his name?
Gene Epstein.
Gene Epstein.
Gene
He was making
Epstein.
Gene
It's totally
somebody
not an
that we should
impression.
feel really bad for.
Well, I mean, I guess, or someone that we could just be laughing at, enjoying ourselves. But I mean, David Horowitz, I think it was. At one of the, all kidding aside, I mean, really one of the most, I mean, a prototype of the kind of authoritarianism we're talking about. And his parents were Stalinists, and he had he had all of this trauma. And then, he went on a crusade. I mean, I remember he came to Bates College in 2006 to try to pass basically something that would force professors to not teach critical thinking skills, essentially. Yeah. I mean, it was this, horrible guy who rose in the 80s as an informant on communism, supposedly. And it clearly, if you read about him, it was just like
Marxist in the
this guy is
60s, wrote some really interesting stuff in the 60s.
Right.
It was pretty much...
Yeah.
He was an
went through
apprentice to Isaac
he was
Deutscher.
the new left. He was the editor of Ramparts, right?
Yes, right.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Yes.
So there's a lot of trauma with some of these people. So what you should have done, and maybe you could have if you weren't such a fucking Aries, is just give Epstein a hug and say, "Listen, dude,
Don't worry.
just because children are going to be able to be fed, and we're not going to live in an authoritarian feudalist future, and just because some of the books you like are actually juvenile and silly, it's okay. You can still do your podcast. Relax."
So where did you do this with him? I'm sorry if I'm distracting. Where's
What's
this?
that?
Where were you when you did this? Where's this guy out of?
Oh, Well, so we did it on his friend Dave Smith's podcast, Part of the Problem, which is the studios in Manhattan.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
What if then you say that we should have health care, but then your dad tells you that the World Series is capitalist propaganda? I'm sorry. All right, Ben Burgess, as a pleasure as always.
Parents sound like assholes.
They do. That's what I'm saying. I have a lot of look. I'm a socialist. I always blame. Blame the outside first. That's my motto. It's so hard, man. It's like I listen to that kind of stuff and just even that thought process. It's like, are you fucking kidding me? You're a grown adult doing this in 2019. Are you fucking kidding me?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just so totally divorced from any recognizable reality we're dealing with. It's stunning. And even the closest to the most sort of extravagant paranoia that these people have is implemented in a place like China, which is not a communist country. But anyways, Ben Burgess, Logic for the Left. Give them an argument. Logic for the Left. Also check them out on Patreon. And we're going to be doing something soon. I believe we're doing a Sopranos conversation, I believe, for your patrons soon, Ben.
Yes.
Well,
that's right. Yep.
Are you out in Jersey?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you got to do it while you're still in Jersey, not down in...
Harvey is very locational. Well, we can always do it over the phone.
Yeah. That's true.
Do it over the phone.
Yeah.
It's all right.
I am location.
Yeah.
You're
You're
right.
extremely locational.
Yeah.
Yes.
I can tell who you are, like, based on that.
Ben Burgess, thanks a million, brother.
Interesting.
Thank you.
Harvey might have an alternative to astrology based on geography.
But your geography is affected by your astrology. It's inescapable.
Oh, now he's getting scientific about it.
Jesus Christ.
See, he's at...
It's material
He's
analysis.
revealing himself even as we speak to him.
It's material analysis. The planet that's not material. Jesus, you guys are delusional.
Yeah.
Think about it.
He's got control of the
I
mics.
love pissing people off with this. All right, Ben. Take care, brother. All right, appreciate it. Now it is time. I really don't like Pete Buttigieg. I don't know if you dislike him as much as I do, but it's time for our bad segment. Let's take a look at this. But first, do we have our bad theme ready? Just 1 second.
Not good. Believe me, not good. No good. Really bad for you. Not good. Believe me, not good.
Oh, I hate that voice. Oh, God, I hate that voice.
I hear you. So, but I really don't like Pete Buttigieg. As Ryan Grimm points out in his excellent new book, in this past weekend's illicit history, he said, we didn't talk about Buttigieg because we had important things to talk about, but he said, Pete Buttigieg is running this whole national campaign on the notion that he has some unique understanding of the Midwest. In Indiana, he's the mayor of the third largest city, and the only reason he's doing this ridiculous presidential run is because he absolutely will not be elected to Congress or the Senate from this Midwest that he supposedly has such a profound understanding of. And in addition to the narcissism and delusion of that, there are persistent and serious and highly disturbing signs of his records with regards to policing, civil rights, and gentrification. This is him being confronted by protesters in South Bend. And it is, this is quite the opposite of an FDR or a Lula.
I do not have evidence that there has been discipline for racist behavior in the case of one.
But if you truly running for president and you black people to vote for you,
but if
you running for president and you want black people to vote for you, that's a downfall. That's not gonna happen.
I'm not asking for your vote.
You ain't gonna get it either.
Is that what you said? That's kind of. And by the way, I just want to add, Pete Buttigieg's answer has been that he is going to approach the DOJ, the Trump DOJ. The first thing that Jeff Sessions did was direct the DOJ to not do anything about police brutality across this country. So Buttigieg's answer is, as somebody pointed out on Twitter, the Democrats' power move, which is a sternly worded letter. Harvey, What do you think of that that dynamic leadership that I've been hearing so much about from Pete Buttigieg right there?
Well, I don't get it. I don't get his candidacy to begin with.
Of course not. Yeah.
And there was a brief moment I thought he could be at least interesting. His father was a Gramsci scholar.
Right.
I thought, well, maybe we'll hear some interesting stuff. But I don't hear anything. Mm-mm. But I have to tell you that this is not to take us away from this bad moment, but it is the case that there were two people who I didn't get to begin with. It's him and Beto.
Okay, sure. Yeah.
I mean, I can't figure them at all. And what this whole thing is. But so when you see this kind of confrontation, you think to yourself, if he can't even handle this, is it just that he can go on TV as a handsome young candidate? What's the deal?
Well, I don't even know about that. I mean,
well,
I think
I was trying to be nice.
I think the thing with him is that I think it's actually important. I think the McKinsey part of him is important. I mean, I think that this is a guy who's Harvard and McKinsey, and he is the perfect media candidate. And in some ways, Elizabeth Warren is too. I mean, not to take from her, but I think purely Buttigieg, which is that he speaks to a narrow set of people whose obsession and self-definition is quote unquote smartness. So they get this big rush of the fact that he speaks different languages, that he has a certain pedigree, that he worked at McKinsey. And he knows how to speak and deliver to those people. And some of those people are part of the Democratic electorate. There is an affluent, I mean, that's, in fact, this is what these people have been catered to for decades in terms of, but how that translates to normal people of any category, I totally don't see.
No, that's what I mean. I don't understand.
I don't see it at all.
I can't understand. You said, I love when you say delusion. I think he's a delusional figure.
Yes.
To have a, but here's the other thing.
Or it's a necessity.
People kept saying, well, what are all those Republicans running for? Well, a seat on Fox News. Well, he's running for a seat on MSNBC.
Or a cabinet. Or setting the tone.
Like urban affairs or whatever it's called these days.
Oh God! Well, that would
be
a nightmare.
Where else?
That's
what
Julian Castro. I mean, no, he clearly had. I think this is where he is delusional. I mean, obviously, I think his self-concept is bigger than that. But let's actually continue on this theme of bad Democrats. This is what Bernie's up against. This is Stephanie Cutter. I think she got her start. I think her first presidential campaign was with John Kerry. And then she was part of the 2012 Obama campaign. This is her talking about Bernie Sanders and healthcare.
House Democrats are having a hearing on Medicare for All. Most of the candidates on the Democratic side, all 24 of them, I don't know if anybody has joined the last 24 hours, have either commented on Medicare for All or have signed on to it. But what does that really mean? That's a really good question, because nobody knows exactly what Medicare for All means. The only one with a very distinct Medicare for All plan out there is Bernie Sanders. And he wants to replace the entire healthcare system, including Medicare, and put a universal plan in place along the lines of Medicare for everybody. That's not going to happen. First of all, I don't think Bernie will be president. Don't tweet that, because there'll be a lot of hate on my Twitter. But I don't think he's going to be the president of the United States.
Reach for your phones. I mean, Bernie,
who is she?
Stephanie Cutter she was a functionary for Obama and a Kerry. She's a Democratic campaign operative.
Okay.
So that's like the distillation of everything wrong with the modern Democratic Party.
Yeah.
And
these are not the Democrats, even of the. They're not even near the six. They're not even Democrats of the 70s. That's how bad they are.
And this is also, I'm getting, look, Bernie, just pragmatically you should brand, if you're going to represent a campaign, try to brand it well. But I mean, people talk about the rage of Sanders supporters. Look at that. I mean, here is this insulated person, totally comfortable, has no problems, and is just dismissing human beings having health care and the aspirations and energy of this massive coalition of young people from all backgrounds who want to secure basic dignity, and it's just dismissed. It's genuinely disgusting.
They're, as isolated as they are, I can't help but imagine that deep down they're driven by fear. I mean, so why do Democrats abandon the tradition that we were talking about? They abandon it because it might actually, talk about rise, it might actually stimulate a movement. You know, so I was thinking today that we want, it doesn't matter, it matters to us if Bernie doesn't succeed. But if a Democrat is elected, you watch, they'll go to the campaign, you know, like if one of them wins a nomination in next summer, and they'll run a campaign that'll talk about mobilizing and all of that. And then they will immediately, as Obama did, turn their back on all of the energy that they might well have stimulated or incited.
That's the Sanders distinction.
Because they are afraid of working people. They are seriously afraid of them.
Right. I agree completely. You know who isn't afraid of making an absolute ass of herself? I mean, you know, Meghan McCain, it's almost at a point of, I'm not sure I want to reward this, but I mean, even someone as stupid as her has to understand what she's doing. And I'm starting, like, you know, I made a lot of jokes about Donald Trump and Ivanka Trump because Donald Trump said a lot of very weird things about Ivanka Trump. Meghan McCain's obsession with her father, to me, is starting to run a little bit past. It's super bizarre. Yes, I will make that joke, Harvey. You don't have to join in. Check this out. We have children at the border being kidnapped in the most obscene, inhumane conditions imaginable. We have lawyers from the Department of Justice arguing in court and public record that they shouldn't be required to give these children soap and toothpaste.
Yeah.
Several of them have died. They've been held in vans. They're in heat containers. And this is on top of a whole war on migrants and refugees, some of which do go back, in fact, to the Obama era. Now, yes. Chuck Todd and all sorts of other, you know, pedants and you know, morally cowardly people who just want to do basic narcissistic, mind-numbing cable horse race coverage and have no moral urgency for anything, have fixated on playing semantic games about whether or not we call concentration camps, right? But I have to say, reducing the suffering of children from a terrorist campaign orchestrated by the current administration to a narcissistic reference to your father, who we all are abundantly aware that we would, I mean, Meghan McCain would be, you know, look, I don't want to do the fill-in alternative profession because I don't want to insult anybody. The point is that Meghan McCain has, I mean, she's a great example of how we do not live in a meritocracy. This is a pure inherited wealth oligarchy. And we know that she only exists literally and figuratively because of her father. Check this out.
Who have died in immigration custody since last year. For almost a decade before, no child has died in immigration custody before the Trump administration.
Ask yourself, ask yourself this question. If those kids were from Norway, would this be happening?
No.
Okay.
Well, it is horrific, and it's a complete and total humanitarian crisis, and we don't have the infrastructure to deal with it. Kevin McCarthy, who's the minority leader, said every member of Congress should be required to go to the southern border, and see the crisis for themselves, and they should also be required to see what's happening in these detention centers. I just want to say one quick thing.
It's not a crisis.
I saw, and apparently, by the way, me saying, can I say one quick thing, is now becoming a parody. That's just how I talk. It's one of my tics. I'm sorry.
It's not the only thing.
Yeah, it's definitely not the only thing. It's also more of just you just being a general obscenity.
Calling these places torture facilities, I understand it is a humanitarian crisis. It's horrific to detain, and you, like you said, people in jail get soap, and people in jail get toothpaste.
Now we're going to minimize it. And of course, she's already minimized it. This is not a crisis. It's a completely manufactured crisis because they've chosen as a strategy to engage in mass cruelty and barbarism to disincentivize people who are already fleeing conditions so horrible that they, even knowing what they will face from these ghouls, are still making the trek. She's already done that. She's already done her basic propaganda. So where is she going to go? Is she going to do the Chuck Todd route or something far more narcissistic?
Humanitarian crisis. It's horrific to detain, and like you said, people in jail get soap, and people in jail get toothpaste. But I know what a torture facility looks like. I've been to one. I know. Listen to me. Excuse me. When you have a facility whose specific purpose is to torture people, that is not what's going on. Yes, it's inhumane, but there is a big difference between the Hanoi Hilton and what's happening at the border right now.
We should be less concerned about what we're calling.
And actually, I would say that putting children in a van for 36 hours is actually pretty fucking intentional. But of course, it's like, my father is the big takeaway.
I think The View is a torture facility. The most I've ever seen of it.
I think Meghan McCain is.
What was it? Operation Phoenix or something in Vietnam, where we had a massive torture infrastructure. But first of all, AOC didn't.
My father was white.
Yeah.
So I don't want to hear about that.
AOC didn't call them Hanoi Hiltons. What is she really taking exception to here?
I'm guessing. Obviously, we all know that she went to an Ivy League university on her own merit. So.
Meghan McCain?
Yeah, Meghan McCain. Yes.
Where'd she go?
She went to Columbia. And I'm sure that she, along with even being on The View, is a reflection of her intelligence and talent and ability to look up words in a dictionary. All right, let's do some Discord questions. Looking like decent results for Tiffany Caban. Really close, but she might be holding on. Kentucky Fried Comrade, what does the TMBS crew think of Joe Sistek's chances in the 2020 Democratic primary? Wow, that's... I think nothing of Joe Sistek.
When I saw the announcement, I decided I didn't need to know who he was.
Yeah, I mean, he used to be a congressman. I don't know.
Right.
He'll be part of a conglomeration of chumps. I don't know what this question means. How do you respond to people who say stuff like, I paid my student debt and debt-free college isn't fair? Like, what's the best way to counter that argument? Thanks.
For the record, I paid off my debt.
Yes.
And I have no desire to see anyone else have to pay off their debts. I mean, I don't get it.
Right. Don't be a petty son of a bitch.
By the way, we shouldn't reduce it to the singular individual who will be liberated from the debt. We should consider the degree to which it will liberate at least 2 generations of Americans and enable them to do things that would be far more significant than hold down some bullshit job to pay off the debt.
That's it. And if people don't get that, that's a good example of sometimes you just need to beat people in politics. But if somebody is reducing something as important as that to their own just sort of personal petty grievance, I mean, I do your best. Say what Harvey said. Make the economic case. It will be beneficial for the economy as a whole. But
I didn't make the economic case.
No, I'm saying you could do that. You made the moral. You made the obvious case. But I'm guessing if somebody's first response is to whine, maybe you should go to the economy. But I mean, Jesus, it's such a bizarre.
I've been hearing about it for 20 years.
Yeah,
but now, I mean, it's just exploded. I mean, you should just remind people that, we're talking about lifting a $1.5 trillion burden off of over 44 million Americans. Right. And how can you not support something that will really liberate so many people?
And I would just like to say, I was in default for years because of my finances and my family not having money. And then I was able to be in a position where I could pay some. And I chose the lowest amount possible because I'm smart. I knew.
I got
so maybe if you were a little bit more, maybe you should have been reading Jacobin and seen that Bernie was going to be popular, and then you would have known to not pay off all of your debt. Question from Evan Carroll. Not sure if you covered Turkey, but curious to see your take on it. So basically, I'll just summarize this. There was a couple of months ago, the CHP, the CHP, they defeated AKP. They defeated Erdogan. They took back the mayorship of Istanbul, which is a significant win. Now, Erdogan's an absolute authoritarian. Turkey's been eroding in a very significant way in the past couple of years. Up until that point, I think because he legitimately is an election winner, they had basically undermined every other form of democracy, but I think they probably manipulated things on the margins, but I think they were basically winning elections. So their response to losing one was to reschedule it. They just had another one, and the opposition won again. basically. And so the second election is the AKP lost another 800,000 K votes, and now there's an open communist through the Turkish Communist Party that won a seat in the east. So the JHP have taken the gem of the country. I mean, the only thing I would say is, I mean, the JHP has a lot of work to do because their origins are in the authoritarian Kabbalist tradition, and there's a lot of issues with, obviously things like Kurdish rights and other really big issues. But of course, in the context of what's happening in Turkey, you need a broad coalition to fight back Erdogan, and that's an important win. Look at the HDP, who are in prison as political prisoners. They were a Kurdish party that reinvented themselves as a broad, democratic, socialist, labor-oriented, broad rights party that connected with the Gezi Park environmental movement. And they had great leadership, and they are in jail on trumped-up charges. And that's another, Jean Bajlan and I wrote a piece on that for Jacobin, but that's my kind of thumbnail take. Fox News 1864. We can't eliminate slavery because it would be unfair to all the people who've been slaves all their lives. Well, it's funny, but I wouldn't elaborate on that one. Congressional baseball fan. Meghan McCain does not want to use hyperbolic terms like concentration camps and torture facilities to describe the ICBP detention center. She wants us to stick with euphemisms. So in that light, Meghan McCain should be sent for an extended stay in the Hanoi Hilton. Thanks. Thoughts? I like that.
Actually, the worst part of it is how she's crapping on her father's.
How so?
Well, one of my best friends spent 5 years in Hanoi Hilton, and he's a progressive, okay?
Right?
But I don't think when she grabs hold of her father's experience to use it just demeans her father's experience. I mean, that's to assume that somehow, because of it doesn't make it any less. But to use it in this fashion is immoral.
Well, I mean, that's all she's got. She's literally got nothing else. I mean, you're asking her to have
she acts nothing else at all.
Nothing else at all. Look at her.
Yeah.
Listen to her. I mean, it's, but, and also I just, to me, and maybe
is she a member of that panel?
My father,
or is she
my father's
a
my
guest?
father. I mean, my father, my father, my father, my father, my father, my father, my father,
Yeah,
my father,
yeah,
my father,
yeah.
my father, 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 my father.
Hey, you asked for it, Harvey.
It's really good. That's
you
really
asked
good.
for it. Okay.
Absolutely.
So now, of course, we've been covering in a very dangerous situation with Iran. If you understand Iranian foreign policy, which is an important thing to understand, obviously. I mean, first of all, they don't have the same incentive structure as North Korea. They have thriving relationships with China, with Russia, and certainly under Rouhani and Javad Zarif, they have a strong relationship with the Europeans because they are obviously significantly more responsible and committed to upholding their international obligations than the Trump administration. That's just an objective reality. They followed, and this always needs to be repeated, the Joint Comprehensive Agreement was followed by Iran. It was signed off by every relevant authority, most importantly the IAEA. No one questioned their observance of the deal for a second. And I think you have different forces. I mean, you obviously have Trump trying to do some type of replay with North Korea and just kind of generally beat his chest and be an idiot. Now, the North Koreans have a different incentive structure. Just having that meeting with Trump peer-to-peer is a foreign policy goal for them. The Iranians don't need to do that. And the Iranians have a much more formalized bureaucracy and foreign policy process. When the supreme leaders signed off on Rouhani and Zarif negotiating with the U.S. and its partners in this agreement, which, as I say always, is the greatest diplomatic accomplishment of recent memory by far, he said you have permission, something to the effect of you have permission to do this, but it's not going to work out well because you can't trust the United States. So that actually was strategic of him because that was his permission to pragmatists and moderates like Rouhani and Zarif to do the deal. But it was also a signal to the conservatives that he understood what the U.S. was. So, of course, this empowers the conservatives. Donald Trump announced sanctions actually targeting the Supreme Leader, which is gratuitous. The Supreme Leader certainly doesn't have a bank account to target here and has no plans to visit the United States. But he also targeted Javad Zarif, the foreign minister, who is again, an objective voice of, a moderate, highly functioning foreign minister who is infinitely more respect in the world than a Mike Pompeo. Again, this is just objective reality. And the Iranians have said, this is not a game to play with them. This could end catastrophically, but they have said that you have cut diplomacy as a possibility with us. And Hassan Rouhani, who wrote an op-ed in the Washington Post as part of this broader effort that happened between him and Obama, and he said, when he first got into the presidency, he was writing the Washington Post, he said, the problem in international affairs is that we have big disagreements, there's intractable things, but we don't think enough in terms of win-wins. This is his language of areas that aren't zero-sum and areas where we can find common ground and agreement. He's a highly diplomatically oriented person. Watch what he had to say about Donald Trump today. And I've searched because I think it's hilarious that he used this terminology, frankly. I've searched to see if it's accurate. And every single translation I'm seeing is saying that he used this terminology to describe Trump.
دچار ناتوانی ذهنی شدن اینا. کاخ سفید دچار معلولیت ذهنی شده. یه آدم اینقدر عقلش از دست بده و بیاد یک کار وقیحانه و احمقانه ای انجام بده که چی؟ رهبری یک کشور رو بگه من میخوام تحریم بکنم چی؟
There's not a single person in the international system. Look, Macron has snapped to attention and backed up the Trump administration a bit, which is just pathetic and should be another strike against his feckless and horrible leadership in France. But there's not a single objective person in the international system, whatever you think of Iran, that doesn't see us, and along with Saudi Arabia and Israel, as the belligerent deal breakers here. That's, again, it's an objective reality, and it's profoundly dangerous. And the little games that Trump thinks he can play are not going to work with Iran. That's not how Iran is structured. And it's certainly not their self-concept. So we'll obviously see how that plays out. I want to find, we'll take a few more questions, but can we do this Bolsonaro thing? Because I'll send it from, I think Vic sent it to me if you guys can't find it.
While you're looking for that, just a quick update on the Queens District Attorney race.
Please.
It's really close. Tiffany Caban is up, but only by 0.7 percentage points, which is like around 500 votes.
Jesus Christ.
And that's with 88% reporting. So it's really close. The closest challenger, Melinda Katz, who is the front runner the entire time, is just behind her with 38.4%. So it's going to be a really close finish. But we really need to recognize how exciting this has been and how much of a long shot this campaign was. It might have even been more of a long shot than AOC's in a lot of ways, given how strong the machine behind Katz was here in Queens.
Oh, well, let's hold out. Look, DA races in general, and you even look at, he's not perfect, blah, blah, blah. But what Krasner has put on the table in Philly is so significant. DA's races, they could not be more important. I texted that to you, Matt. Oh, you texted. Okay. Champagne Communist wants to know if I'm more of a yoga or Zen guy. Depends on my mood. It's a deep question, though.
I'm more of a champagne guy.
When are you going to get Waz and John Boyce to talk sports with Matt? That's a good idea. Dave said gamers get shit done. Do you think we could get Bernie to include players video game under a federal job guarantee? Asking before my brain goes into recovery mode. I'm guessing that Harvey JK is not going to be super
Bernie just announced he launched a Twitch feed.
Yeah. So there you go, you little pricks. I want you to have union protections. And I want you to have... Okay, this is Jair Bolsonaro. The greatest president, I would say... Lula da Silva... Wait, we're going to play this in a second. Lula da Silva is the best president of the 21st century globally. Cannot be repeated enough. This guy who people like to dissociate themselves from because he's uncouth, because his family's connected to paramilitaries and militias, because he's a racist, bigot, sexist, misogynist, homophobic. Everything that's bad is this guy. But, I mean, he can apparently make his arms into that stupid, embarrassing machine gun motion. But he should have thought about his push-up capacity before he tried to do
That's the whitest group of Brazilians I've ever seen.
Though, yeah, that's right. Here is Jair Bolsonaro trying to...
Oh, what the fuck is he doing?
Talk about delusional.
What a cuck. What a freak weirdo cuck. You know, Lula is older than him. He's a political prisoner. And you see him in those interviews. I have no doubt Lula could out-push up that motherfucker.
And isn't he a former military man, too?
Yeah.
I mean, just terrible form.
Sad.
Bolsonaro.
Bolsonaro. I wonder if Dave Rubin thinks that that's like a great push-up.
I don't even care about those guys. It really just honestly doesn't matter. Bolsonaro.
Oh, can we?
Whose voice is that?
That's Dave Rubin.
Yeah, I've never heard the guy.
He's one of the. Well, of course you have.
You don't like
listen to the
ideas,
show.
apparently.
Yeah. I guess you're not
Remember,
interested
I
in
think it was a
ideas
previous
because
show. I
you're
said,
on
"Who the
left.
fuck is he?" I think.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
always that should be the.
You should
appropriate
maintain that
response.
response. Yeah.
All right. The final question of the night. I'm sure nobody will have this, but I'll just throw it out there. Without looking, can you name all 25 Democratic candidates? Might be fun for Harvey.
I can.
You can.
I can't.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I mean, if I had time, if we went for a drink, I could do it.
I can't. Why would we want to talk about that for a drink? We have much better things to talk about. Most of these people are irrelevant, and I will not give them attention unless it is to make fun of them.
It's reactionary to give them attention.
And I legitimately, and I won't give these people attention either, but like Marianne Williamson and Mike Gravel are way higher on my list than most of the members of Congress running.
You didn't see Marianne's answer about if billionaires should exist, did you?
Ooh, not good.
Not good,
Not
folks.
good, Marianne. Well, I'll tell you what.
She's not going to betray Oprah.
I'll tell you what. If Bill, right, material
that's right.
self-interest.
That's right.
I'll tell you what. If Bill de Blasio is one who is a terrible mayor of New York in many ways and a pawn of the real estate industry, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But
No,
he
that's
is
true.
absolutely.
Yeah.
But if he is one free Lula tweet away from being my second choice.
I mean, he's
I'll
also
tell you
put
what.
numbers on the board in ways that other people haven't.
So you are
No,
you're
absolutely.
one of those single issue people.
Yeah. No, I mean,
I say that with affection.
So it's no, but you know what? It's hard for me because, and I'll say this in the post game. I mean, obviously, if push came, I mean, look, Bernie's just the number one. Period. There's just if you have a left commitment, sorry, I don't see how that's even debatable. But Warren is the second choice. Now, but Tulsi Gabbard is right on more individual foreign policy things than Warren is. It's just that I have a structural distrust of her worldview. But to me, foreign policy is not an addendum, and Warren has a horrible foreign policy.
Yeah,
so I'm not.
I'm not arguing with you. But
No, yeah.
In fact, I didn't even know where you were going.
Yeah,
you
no,
said
I'm
something else.
just
that-
talking. I'm just saying how. The reason I can joke about my sort of number 2 slot, I'm not.
Oh, right,
there's
right.
problems with Warren. I'm not. I mean, first of all, she's simply not as good as Bernie in terms of just the broader set of what she represents. Though she just has obviously some very good things domestically, but I can't do butter at home, guns abroad, and I just don't see any evidence from her that she's got any understanding of that stuff.
Yeah, I'm not even going to.
Yeah,
I don't understand why she ran.
Oh, I agree.
In other words, if you take Bernie and Warren together, it's fairly clear what the Democratic Party is supposed to be.
Right.
Okay? Allow for some of the Warren stuff to be women who just really want a woman candidate.
Definitely.
But it's still the case that that's what the Democratic Party is supposed to be. She held back from endorsing Bernie last time, which didn't help.
Right.
This time she entered the race, and she had to know that it was going to be at the expense of Sanders.
Now,
She
the
had to
weird
know.
thing is, we saw some polling today. I don't remember who did it though. That apparently, and I have to say,
Is this the Emerson College poll?
No, was it with the second choices? So that Bernie Sanders supporters, because they in fact are extremely policy oriented, their second choice overwhelmingly is Warren.
Yeah.
Warren people's second choice is Buttigieg, which I really want. So that to me, if you combine the fact that she's getting some people who just have this.
What's the gender balance in her support? Do you know?
I don't know that. But I know that there's just a huge irrational
Why would you go
hatred.
from Warren to Buttigieg? Why?
Because you hate Bernie Sanders.
It
And
just
that's
right.
And
Yeah.
that to me is just, that's one of the reasons that I'm just going to be so consistently in this guy's corner. It's not that he's perfect or above reproach, obviously, but there is no modern American politician, if you combine time spent in politics, time spent struggling for vital things that were completely off the table, like Medicare for all. With the level of vitriol and hatred, there is no greater mismatch.
Yeah.
And again, I'm saying this in the context of, in fact, if somebody did just say, you know what, the bottom line is I want to have a woman president before I pass away. I'm supporting Elizabeth Warren. She's progressive enough. No, you're not going to get any argument from me. I hear that. But the notion that people could have the confidence to put in their mouths that Bernie Sanders is a narcissist or doing it for himself, when this guy, could you imagine for decades being in neoliberal and Newt Gingrich Congress and being one of the only handful of people that has anything to say about the poor in this country? And then and he encouraged Warren to run in 2006. He ran out of obligation against Hillary Clinton. This guy has actual commitment.
Yeah.
And the fact that it is met by people who have no commitment are in fact careerists and narcissists who have no concern for justice, it's just totally disgusting.
And you would have imagined the Warren people saying Harris next.
That's it. Buttigieg, then Harris. But Harris is really not caught.
No, I know that.
I
but
think,
I thought there was the question of got to have a woman before.
I think it's that weird overlap with this over focus on this kind of performative nerdery is where Warren and it's all these people that think that they're on the TV set of The West Wing or something and that they're reading briefing papers and all this nonsense. But I think the other thing is that the last thing I'll say is I think the injustice to Harris, and I will put it this strongly, is that the way in which, because she's actually, in my view, I think she's a very charismatic, very effective communicator, very good politician, but it's for a different time. And the problem and where it's unfair to her is I think that the type of political skills that she has is of a time when things really were impossible because of racism and sexism for a black woman to emerge in that way. So she is a candidate of the 90s, of the early aughts. And I think now this smoothness and this glibness, people really are not like the example I use is there was this back-to-back CNN town halls that happened a couple weeks ago. It was rapid fire, Sanders, Buttigieg, Harris. And this was the one where, Bernie came out and was just like, yeah, look, I think if you're in jail, you should be able to vote, universal franchise, right? And then they go to Buttigieg and he gives some nerdy whatever, but he says no. Okay, he does say no. He breaks the right wing position, but he gives you a position. Harris, and she said this at least several times, I think that's something we really ought to have a conversation about. Now, I think in a non-social media saturated, pre-Bernie Sanders, pre-AOC, pre-Ilhan Omar, Katie Porter political universe, you might have had someone, some scribbler for the New Republic going, oh, the way she evaded that question was brilliant. But instead what happens is that thousands of people on Twitter go, hey, you didn't answer the question. And I don't necessarily care that you were super smooth and charming in how you did it. So I think that's Harris's problem.
I will tell you, this is totally irrelevant, but in line with Harris and the other senators, is what happened to the days in which we really wanted damn good senators? Why do these people, why do they feel compelled to run for president and en masse literally create a circus of this particular campaign?
Why not? Probably being in the Senate sucks. You work under Mitch McConnell and you get to travel around the country. And even if you were polling less
then why
than
aren't they going around the
1%,
country trying to help Senate campaigners in other states.
Harvey, because it's a nation of narcissists.
Exactly.
You know this. Come
Exactly.
on.
You bet.
California mindset, brother.
Yep.
All right. Harvey, what should people, I mean, obviously they'll follow you on Twitter and everything, but what is the main thing you want people to look up?
What to look up?
Book you've written, anything? Like, what do you want to leave people with before we go?
The most recent book was The Fight for the Four Freedoms.
Yes.
But the book that I would really want people to have a look at is Thomas Paine and the Promise of America.
Both great books. I've read both. Harvey, thank you as always. I appreciate it,
I'm
brother.
sorry I didn't have more to offer in the post game.
Kidding me?
But the bad just gave me a bad taste. No.
The fear.
Of course. Buttigieg will do
the
that
fear,
to you.
man.
Thanks, everybody. We appreciate all of you. This Sunday, Bill Fletcher Jr. We will see you soon. Peace and love.